And all right, ETM Hotep, everyone. Welcome to the Seshu Mighty Meadow Netcher YouTube channel, shortened to the Seshu channel. This is your brother Wujau Menib Edi Ma'at. And today we have a treat for you today. And as you can see, we're diving straight in with no intro. We're cutting straight to it. So today's discussion will be an introduction to the Kemetic calendar with our good brother Sonjedi Ankh. So first, I want to welcome everyone who has tuned in, those who have subscribed to our channel, those who have been notified, and we're waiting. Definitely appreciate everyone tuned in. All right, so today is Sunday, June 30th. Hope everyone is enjoying their Sunday morning. Hope you had your tea, your snacks, your coffee. Hope you have your notepad and pens because we're definitely going to be learning something today. All right. So without further ado, I will bring in our good brother, Sonjedi Ankh.
All right. All right. Imatep, everyone. Some will say Ankh Ma'at, others Alafia. Greetings and peace to everyone. All right. So I'm happy to be here today, to discuss the ideas that go into the Kemetic calendar. So today we're going to hit specific bullet points. Essentially, this is a warm-up session because when you deal with the Kemetic calendar, it can be pretty complex. So today it's a warm-up essentially. Today is the warm-up, and then in part two, we're going to get more concise. So because we have some upgrades and updates for the calendar, but before we get to that, we want to have a foundation of some general understandings before we get there. I'd like to again thank my brother Wujao for allowing me to come on and to share these ideas, especially with the calendar project that was founded by our elder and teacher, Sebat or Dr. Riketti Ahmed. So this is
Mm-hmm.
part of that research, and that we cannot do this work without the work of our ancestors and our elders. So we want to give a shout out to them. We want to give a shout out to our elder Montgomery Bonacci, who has done research in this area, especially dealing with Kemetic astronomy. He done presentations regarding the vocabulary, who the astronomers were, very a lot of artwork and in his presentations, great information. Definitely look him up, and get some of that information. I was initially uh, influenced by the book put out by ASCAC in the early 2000s, the Preliminary Challenge. And in the Preliminary Challenge, there's a chapter in which it discusses critical issues in nonviolent studies by Dr. Valinda Robogo. It was that chapter that really propelled me to look into the dynastic period in context of how to figure out periodization. And Dr. Riketti Ahmed's chapter on a calendar project, that one also was a great influence on me in this part of the journey. So I have to make sure to give shout out and respect to them because without them, I would not be here at this level of understanding and the research. So without further ado, let's start pulling up our slides so that we can. All right, Wujal, I'm going
Just
to do.
before
Hmm?
before you actually dive in,
Hmm.
just briefly, I just want to let everyone know that, as I said, bring out your notepad, your pens and notepads, or your tablet, because as the brother Sonjedi does his presentation afterwards, we're gonna do a brief Q&A. Correct?
Hmm.
Okay. So just so everyone know, if you have questions about what's being presented, or anything in the periphery of that, just save them until the end, and so you won't lose it. Make sure you jot it down, and we're gonna open it up for Q&A, and go from there. So just wanted to make sure everyone knows that. And also, I'll be putting some information in the chat if you want to support Sonjedi, and appreciate his sharing of information and things like that. All right. So go ahead. I'm sorry. Pass it back to you.
Uh, all right, so let me try this whole screen here. Let's do a share.
All right. Let me get you up on the screen. So let me know when you have it
Okay,
full screen
I have it
and
up.
ready to
I have
go.
it up.
Okay. So you ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So again, thank everybody for coming through and hanging out with us, and about to get hit over the head with some good information. All
Right.
right. So here we go. It's all you.
All right. Okay, so you see the full screen. Everything's good.
Yep. Everything's all
Okay.
good.
All right. Introduction to the Kemetic calendar, foundations and challenges. Originally, this presentation was given to our brothers and sisters in the French-speaking world. So the slides, well, some of the slides may have French translations next to them, but there's other slides where it was complete French translation of the English. So, of course, I removed it for this presentation. It was given last year. So I also want to give a shout out to brothers and sisters out in the French speaking world, who showed me some love on that side of the world. All right. So let us begin to discuss the 5 days over the year as relayed by Plutarch. Now, Plutarch is a Greek geographer and historian. Mind you, he's getting his knowledge from priests in Kemet. This is where he's getting it from. And of course, he's relaying it with Greek deified equivalents of the Kemetic deities. So we'll translate as we go by. So he starts off by saying the goddess Rhea. Now, Rhea is equivalent to Nut, right? Nut, the sky goddess, or we might say Netcheret. Some say Netchert or Netert. Right? So they say, having accompanied the company Kronos by stealth. So Kronos is Geb. So Geb is the earth Netcher, the earth spirit, the earth deity. And these two were husband, wife, brother, sister, etc. Okay. So they accompanied the Kronos by stealth or in secret and was discovered by Helios. So Helios is Ra here, who straightway cursed her and declared that she would not deliver children any month of the year. So she was doomed to not be able to give birth. So Hermes, who we know as Jehuti or Tahuti, there's some variations there. However, also being in love with the same goddess, maybe he has some feelings for her, perhaps. In return for favors which he received from her, we don't know what that is. Went and played a dice with Selene and won from her the 70th part of each day. So Selene, although is female here, but this is equivalent to Khonsu, the another lunar Netcher or lunar deity, just like Jehuti is in part a lunar deity. Yeah. So he played droughts with this deity and won. And then it says, these parts he joined together and made from them to give complete days. And he added them to the 360 days of which the year formerly considered. What does that mean? So we know that when we look up at the stars, when we use the celestial bodies of the stars, especially the decans, and we'll discuss that in more detail further along, the decans give us 360 days per se because it's a complete circle. So the decans represent 10 degrees in the sky or 10 days. Again, we'll discuss that further along. So when you get 36 of these, you get 360 days. So they added 5 days to their calendar to make the 365 days. So then we continue. These 5 days to this day are called epicomeni, which is a Greek word meaning added on to. That is the superated, and they are observed by them as the birthdays of their gods. One of the first of these, they say, is Osiris was born. So we know this Osir or Resiru. Upon the second of these days was born the elder Horus. So that's Heru Or. Upon the third day is Typhon. We know it as Set. Some people will use the pronunciation Setesh or Setek. Upon the fourth day is Isis or Aset. Some say Ast. We may even say Aseta. She was born in the marshes of Egypt or Kemet. And upon fifth day, Nephthys, which is Nebuchadnezzar. So that's your 5 days upon the year. So this gets us, prepared for the idea of how mythology is used to relay truths and histories and stories and memories of a people. Now, we can go to a concise conversation or explanation by the great ancestor scholar Shekin Tajop in Civilization and Barbarism and Authentic Anthropology. So he tells us that the Kemetic people invented the 365-day year, breaking it down as follows: 12 months of 30 days. So that's your 360 days that we just discussed, plus the 5 intercalated days. So remember, those 5 intercalated days are represented by the 5 birthdays of those 5 deities or Netcheru we just discussed. Each one corresponds to the birth of one of the following gods. So Osiris, Isis, Horus, Seth, and Nephthys. So he further simplifies the calendar structure. In a quote, the year is divided into 3 seasons of 4 months, the month into 3 weeks of 10 days that do not overlap the months, the day in the 24 hours, setting foundation for the current Gregorian calendar. All right. So we begin with the mythology, and now we go into the scholastic explanation as we have here. And what you always want to do is combine the agency of mythology of the people whom you are consulting and studying with the scholastic input. Combine them together. That will help you have a complete picture. Here we have some terms, basic terms regarding time. And of course, there's more terms, but these are some key ones here. With the Medew Netcher, so we have At, moment, instant time. Renpet for year. Abid or Abidu for month. Tari, meaning time, season. And Wenwet or Wenut for hour, or which is a division of time. Keep in mind, the pronunciations that we're using are approximate. It is what we may call Egyptology speak. Okay? But again, these are approximations. We're just using them based on the consonants only. Here's a key term for you, a word for astronomer. So in the previous slide, you see at the bottom, Wenwet, hour, division of time. Notice the Medew Netcher, the glyphs that's used to comprise this term. The last 2 terms, you have a star, 5-point star, and then you have a sun, meaning that we're talking about time. So the sun, the last glyph that's on the bottom, is a category giving us the sense of time. And then you have a star, which indicates to us that time, one of the primary modes of time is utilization of stars, looking up at the sky. Right. So here we have Wenweti. So a Wenweti is what you may call an astronomer. But literally, it would mean one who is of the hour. Because we have the word when wet, meaning hour or division of time. And then when we're talking about a person, we have a participle and when we deal with the grammar. So one who is of the hour. We can extend that by saying one who observes objects of the night hours, i.e. the stars, to give some more context. And we see three variations of this word. So we have 1, 2, 3. The top one, you can look at the last three signs. These are determinatives or classifiers. So this one here, we have a crescent moon. Again, a celestial body in the sky. We have a star. You see that in the sky. And then you have the eye here for the sense of observation. The second one we already went through. And then the third one, again, we have a star here. And then we have man, woman, and then the triple dashes. So we're talking about people. So this would be, this third one would be when with you. When with you. Okay, those who are of the hour. Okay. So now this one's important. This picture I took from a book by Marshall Clagett, where he discusses Egyptian astronomy. Calendars, Clocks, and Astronomy by Marshall Clagett. And this is an image of what they call the Cairo calendar. Keep in mind, everyone, that it's important to look for primary documents. This is something, even among the Seshu, that's pretty much stable for us. Let's look at the primaries to help us understand what we're looking at. So we know that in ancient Kemet that they divided the day into 24-hour period. And throughout the year, we know that days can get shorter, nights are longer, and vice versa. Nights are shorter, days are longer, depending on the season. So in this document, I chose 3 different time periods. One from the flooding season, which begins around like the middle to the end of July, going into August. And then the emergent season, this is where plants start growing. And then you have your harvest season, where now you're harvesting your crops. So in the flooding season, it recorded the hours of the daytime as 16 hours, and then nighttime for 8 hours here. And then as you get further along to the year, it starts to switch. So now keep in mind that the flooding season it also encompasses what we call the fall equinox, that time period. And then the spring, what we call the spring equinox, would occur in the emergence season or the growing season. So things switch as far as the time of light during daytime. And then you have almost an equivalent day and night during harvest season, according to how this scholar recorded time. All right. Okay, so this here is a quote. Again, I took this out of Marshall Clagett's book. This is the biography of Amenemhet concerning the construction of a water clock during the 18th dynasty. Why is this important? Because remember, back then, they didn't have clocks the way we have them now. So during the daytime, people would use solar clocks, sundials. But then the question is, how do you tell time at night? How do you tell time at night? What if it's cloudy in the sky? What other methods can we use? So this scholar, inventor, actually talks about an invention that supposedly he made. He says this: listen to what I say to you, you who are upon earth. So he's talking, so here he's leaving this for those of us who have lived on beyond his life. He says, I lived 10 years under King Ned-Petira, which is Eamos the first, 21 years under the Lord of the Two Lands, Jesekara. So that's Amenhotep the first, who was the son and successor of Eamos the first, while reading in all the books of the divine word, which is Medew Netcher, meaning that he's a scholar. He's well studied. He said, I found the longest night of the wintertime, growing season, question mark, to be 14 hours long, when the shortest night of the summer or the harvest season is 12 hours long. I found an increase in the night's length from month to month, and then it decreased from month to month. So these things are being recorded as far as the length of time of daylight and nighttime. I found them represented on the interior of the water clock. So again, they're reconstructing some of the glyphs that may have been damaged. And the movements of Ra, or the movements of the sun, and the moon god, or i.e. the moon, with the utterances of both. I made a Merket instrument, which is an instrument for telling time, reckoning upon the year for the good fortune of the king of Upper and Lower Kemet, Jesekara, who's Amenhotep the first. It was correct for the beginning of Akhet, for Peret, and for Shamu. Now, these are the 3 seasons: Akhet, Peret, and Shamu. For embracing the moon at this time, and for every hour at its times. So what he's saying is that he either created the instrument or he made it. He made the instrument after it was already been created, and he tested it out. This is the basis of scientific reckoning here, because he's recording time, and he has a device for which he's now testing the recording of time to see if it's correct. And then he tells us it was correct for the beginning of the flooding season, the growing season, and the harvest season. And then it says for embracing the moon at its time. So he's taken into account the lunar cycle, and for every hour at its time. And then the water runs out only through a single exit. So this is a water clock. Here's an image of a water clock or a Merket. This one is called the Karnak water clock during the time of Amenhotep III, 18th dynasty. So if you take a close look on the interior, you see these dots on the interior. So what they would do is they would fill this vessel with water. And at the bottom, it's not shown on this side of it, but there's a small hole. So the water would leak out at a rate to which each hour it would go down one level. The water would go down one level as demarcated by these dots, which are perfectly aligned all the way around the interior brim. And this is how they were telling time at night. And just like this person here, this scientist, he's saying, and he tested it. So you had to be up all night doing these observations. So these priests, these scientists, these astronomers were pulling the night shift, doing observations. And we know this is not easy work. And they're recording it so they can pass it on to the next person, so that person can confirm the measurements and calculations. This is another type of a Merket here. You may call this a mobile sun clock, if you will, or if you will. And we look at the Medew Netcher, the determinative for the second version here, it shows how this object looks or would be depicted. So you can see in the front here where it has damage because the frontal piece was broken off, but it would look like this. It would have an upward slope coming upward. So obviously you can see it was broke off. You can see from the recumbent side or the side transverse, and then you have measuring a dial here to make sure that it's level. And then the sunlight would come down and cast a shadow upon the smooth surface or the hypotenuse surface. So we understand that just strict geometry is being utilized here. So if you use strict geometry, we know that this is the hypotenuse here, the bottom, okay, this is your base, and this is the side. Mind you, there's no grease yet, okay, when most of these objects were formed. Okay? Some of these were during the time of grease, but others were predate. And here's another observation tool, another Mercat. And this is for looking at the stars at night. So you can set up the stick and you can look through the hole so that way it can help you focus on a particular star, and then you could track its movement. So when it goes out of line with your sight, then you adjust your stick. And this is how we can tell the movement of, well, we know it's the movement of Earth. We know that now. But for them, it's the movement of the stars. Okay. Wujab, do you have anything you want to ask before we move forward?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. So far, well, maybe during the Q&A, because okay. I had a few questions that for you to elaborate on, but maybe during the QA. But so far so good. I think everything is good. That other Marquette, I can think the first one, if you go back to that first one, that one right there. Okay, you did have the 18th dynasty. Okay, yep. No, that was it, because that one, that's very interesting. That's well detailed and everything. I think that's good. I wish we had more pictures of it. Like I could blow it up and show those inner markings inside, because you would miss it if you didn't point them out. You would miss those dots. Yeah,
those are available. Those are available. Anybody, if you could just type in Karnak water clock, some of these images will come up. But some of the more detailed images are on specialized websites, Egyptology websites. I have acquired some of them. Right now, I'm in communication with a Canadian Egyptologist regarding Egyptian astronomy, in which that's her specialty. Sarah Simmons, Egyptologist. So she was gracious enough to share some of her work with me in private email. So that'll be forthcoming.
Okay.
Be forthcoming. Yeah.
Only other thing, I just want to remind everyone, again, thank you for tuning in, and we're definitely being treated with the presentation, but we will open up a brief Q&A afterwards. Just want to remind everyone of that. But all right, so I'm just going to pass it on back over to you.
All right. Okay, so we know that the Kemetic week, what we're calling it week, is determined by what we call Decan Stars that rise upon the evening horizon, or they might call and move upon what we're calling the ecliptic. So that's a pathway of stars. And a new one, they switch out every 10 days. And as far as what that Decan, so let's just say we have Decan A. So Decan A, or that star group A, will rise upon the nightly horizon, and it'll be the first one for 10 nights. And then on the 11th night, it'll be the second one, because another one is going to come up, and that'll be first. So that'll be star group B. Star group B will then rise for 10 nights each. And then it switches. And then star group C will be the first one for 10 nights, etc. So that's how they calculated their week for the month. 3 10-day periods making a 30-day month. Again, this is another picture from Marshall Clagett, and this is the Leiden Papyrus. And here's a translation from one of the lines. It says, "You receive water upon the offering tables on the first day of the week when offering is made to Wennefer." Now, mind you, this is the 1st century AD. And what it's saying here, this is ceremonial, that every 10 days you should pour libation and give offerings to spirits, deities, ancestors on the first day of each week. Of course, there's more detail and more examples. Again, we'll reserve that for our next presentation. But what's significant is that in this same line, highlighted in blue, these are the glyphs for that phrase, first day of the week, which is Tepi Sumeju. So Tepi meaning first, head. So the head of Su. So Su is a word meaning day, as in a calendar date. So we have various words for day. So you have Ra, that many of you may be familiar with. Ra is the 24-hour period. Haru is the daytime when it's light outside. So that's the first, on average, 12 hours of the day, the daylight. And then Garaha, which is GR.H, is the nighttime hours. And then Su, or Suwu, is a calendar date. So that's what you have here. And then 10. So Su Medew, or Su with the 10, means a 10-day period. Translation, the first day of the 10-day period, which you will recognize as a week. So first day of the week, if you will. So we want to keep that in mind, that a Kemetic week is 10 days, as opposed to our 7-day week. And our 7-day week is based on the lunar cycle, because on average, when we look at the 4 main phases of the moon, as we observe, you have the new moon, which is not visible to the naked eye. And then you have your first quarter moon, new moon, and then third quarter moon. On average, there are 7 days in between. So that's how we get 7 days for a week, in which there's 4 weeks per month. And then after that, then it switches out again as far as the lunar cycle. So that's how we got 4 weeks. Here's a coffin of the Prince Meseheti. And this is one of the many coffins that have astronomical information and images in it, going back to 11th dynasty. And many of them go back to as far back as the 9th dynasty. Again, we'll show more of that in our future presentations. Pattern of deacons. So, pardon me, I do need to read this. So Clagett, Marshall Clagett, he tells us that the Decan Stars on the model of Sirius disappear in the duat, or the underworld. All right, let's stop there. So when stars go out of our view, according to Sarah Simmons, it is called a Shinduat. So the Shinduat is the cycle of the duat. So those stars are in their own underworld until they are reborn. And when a star is reborn or rises back up, that is called a Mesu, or rebirth, if you will, or birth. All right, so it is in a Shinduat for 70 days, after which time they rise again. And when they rise again, that's your Mesu. The account is of a simplified scheme of 360 days. Again, we see that number again. An old star dying and a new star being born every 10 days. After spending 70 days invisible in the duat, or in that realm of the duat, a deacon rises and spends 80 days in the eastern heaven before it culminates or transits the meridian, after which it works for 120 days. Now, I want y'all to keep this in mind, that word work. Keep the work in mind. For 120 days, its work being to mark a given hour by transiting for 10 days, starting with the 12th hour during the first decade, okay, and ending with the first hour during the 12th decade. Now, when they say decade, they're talking about a 10-day period, not a decade in the sense of a 10-year period. So keep that in mind, work. What is that work? They're operating. They're doing things. These stars, symbolically, of course. So one of the words for that the Kemetic use for deacon is bakati, coming from the word bak, which means work. So bakati means those who work, or those celestials who work. Bakati. Now, this is significant for the African traditional system we find here in Northeast Africa, i.e. Kemet. That when a person transitions, that person's Ba travels up to the stars and becomes an Ankh. Now, Ankh is also another word for the stars, the Decan Stars, or just stars in general, because they're luminaries. So it goes into the sky to become one with Ra, one with the stars, one with Spidet or the Sirius star, one with Orion or Sahu, the 7 stars of Sahu or 7 stars of Orion. But in order to do that, they have these stars who carry their spirits up and helps to transport it. So they're doing work. So that's the cultural context of why these stars are called Bakatiyu, Decan stars, and one star is called Bakati for the singular. And again, this is a participle going back into grammar. So Bakati is one who works, or a celestial who works, and Bakatiyu are those who work, or those celestials who work. So on the right-hand side, from a source by a overseer of the priest of Wepawat, a hereditary prince, on the columns in that tomb, he has deacon stars, or the deacon groups listed on there. So what I did was I gave the first 3 deacons, and then of course I skipped 4 through 33 to show you 34 to 36, but it's actually 36 altogether. First, middle, last decade, or deacon periods. So the first deacon, that covers your 1st through the 10th days. Your middle deacon covers 11th through the 20th days. Last deacon covers 21st through the 30th days. And at the end of it, it says the total of those who are in their places, i.e., the gods of the sky, per se. And mind you, this is a cultural context, and it's 36 in all. And 36 times 10 is 360 for a complete circle. And then eventually we have to have the added 5. This document here is a reproduction from the astronomical ceiling of the architect Samut. And Samut, he was a steward of the estate of Amun during 18th dynasty under Nesutet Hatshepsut, or Ma'at Kara, which is her throne name, Her Majesty, Ma'at Kara Hatshepsut Amun, 18th dynasty. So it's one of the oldest. It's not the oldest, but it's one of the oldest representation, of the complete 36 deacon sets. But remember, the 36 deacon sets goes back to at least the 9th dynasty of Kemet, dynastic Kemet. And when it comes to deacon sets, there's different families of deacon sets. So you have the Samut family, and the Samut family, there's about 18 sources for it, meaning there's 18 different temples and tombs that have this exact same order. Many of you are familiar with Dendera. We'll show that in a little bit. Right here. So Dendera, in the temple of Hathor, or Het-Heru, follows a similar pattern as the Samut, a little different, but it follows a different pattern. But they start off with the same deacon as the first one. Proposed construction, Ptolemaic period 50 CE, or BC, excuse me, 50 BC. That's the proposed construction. However, there seems to be evidence to suggest that this temple was rebuilt, refurbished, or built upon. And the last time it was refurbished or built upon was during the Ptolemaic era. So some scholars believe it goes back to the 18th dynasty. Here's another imagery of it. So on the right-hand side, you see the original artifact there, which is currently resides in the Louvre Museum in France, but they took it from the Temple of Het-Heru in Kemet and Dendera. So they removed it from the ceiling and then transported it. On the left-hand side, you see an artist's rendition of these same deacons. So the outer brim, these are the 36 sets. And then when you go into the middle here, you start seeing signs of the zodiac, if you will. You know, you'll see your Leo, you'll see your Taurus. Here's your Taurus here. Here's your Ram, your Aries. You can see what else we got here. You know, you have your twins, you have your bulls, etc. And your other signs as well. Our lunar year is 354 days. Keep that in mind. In the lunar month, I believe that's Sothic. Lunar month, 29.5 days. Your sun cycle, we know that 365 days, which is actually an additional 5 hours, 48 minutes, and 46 seconds, of course, just to be precise. But over time, that adds up. And then finally, we have our sidereal cycle. When you say sidereal, we're talking about the Sirius star. So the cycle of Sirius, or Sothic star, so we could say a small sidereal year is 365.25 days. A long sidereal year, which is 1,461 days. And then sidereal era is 1,460 years. So we have that distinction. So in our next presentation, we'll deal with that in more detail. when we talk about the calendar, the updated and upgraded calendar that will be coming out soon. Quick image of Spidet and how she is associated with Osset. So you see this image here. You see the Osset sign. You see the star here upon the head. Her name is the Sharp One because the initial glyph, the triliteral, is a thorn for sharpness. So although Greeks call this the dog star, that is not the orientation we have in Kemet, because sharpness, but it also has to do with geometric shapes in the sky that we artificially draw to connect stars. Although calling it the dog star is not wrong, we just want to know the cultural orientation. Okay. Wujai, you got anything? You good before we go to this next part here?
So far, I just want to remind everyone, because I'm monitoring the chat at the same time, is that we definitely will have a brief Q&A. And I see some people are asking a few questions, and Emiket is addressing those questions, and everyone seems to be satisfied. So I think everybody is definitely at a state of peace.
All right, everybody's all right. Anybody need to take a break? We good? That's good. Get a drink.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
right.
But yeah, again, I want to appreciate everybody for tuning in and hanging with us Sunday. You all could be doing anything, but we're here to learn. And also in the chat, we put the support for the brother Sonjedi. So if any of you all are appreciating the sharing of the information and want to support, we put the information that you can contact and support our good brother Sonjedi. So be on the lookout for that. It's in the chat, and I pinned it to the top. All right, but I'm pass it on to you.
Okay. All right, time here. All right. So next, let's talk about the leap year. So the Kemetics recognized that the year was longer than 365 days, correlated to the calendar accordingly. And this is discussed in the book, The African World History Project, The Preliminary Challenge. All right, and this is by Dr. Riketti Ahmed. She continues to tell us a text or decree which was found at the site of Tanis or Canopus in Kemet, enacted in the 3rd century BC, called the periodic adjustment of the calendar for the account for the extra amount of time embodying in the year. So you have what's called the Decree of Canopus. This is where you had many priests or scholars from across the land meet together to discuss how they're going to correct their calendar, if you will, or adjust the calendar. Why? Because when you don't adjust your calendar or to account for the Sirius cycle. So as we've shown before, the Sirius cycle or Spidet cycle is 365.25 days. So we do a little bit of math here. So we know 0.25, which is 1/4. When you multiply that by 4, what do you get? You get 1. 1/4 times 4 is 1. Or 0.25 is, when you multiply by 4, is 1. So you have 365.
So wait.
0.25.
What?
Go ahead.
Nah, I was gonna crack a joke. Not according to Terrence Howard now.
Who?
Terrence Howard, you know, the he multiply.
Oh, okay. Oh.
No, I'm just playing.
Well,
No,
hey,
go ahead.
Hey, I would love to have his input on this too.
All right, no, you know, the 1 times 1 is 2 thing. That's all. No,
Yeah, like 1 times is
no,
1.
I'm sorry, but go ahead.
All right. So you multiply it by 4, you get 4. So 365.25. That means every 4th year those 1/4 will add up to 1. So you add that to 365, making it 366 days on the 4th year. This is where you get your leap year, because when the Sirius star cycle, it moves, that means that the sun cycle has to leap forward. So let's say if your new year is on Sunday, then that means that for the next 3 years, your new year is going to occur on a Sunday. On that 4th year, it's going to occur on Monday, because now there's 366 days. 4 years later, it's going to occur on a Tuesday. And it will keep doing it every 4 years, moving upon the year. So then your civil calendar or your solar calendar will lag behind. So what they decided to do is, let's adjust the calendar so that the two calendars don't fall out of sync. So that's why every 4 years you leap your solar calendar by 1 year, so that it stays in sync with the Sirius cycle. Due to the change in the Peret Spedet every 4 years, and also the other festivals which are celebrated in Shamu, so again, that's your harvest season, at this time, which will come to be celebrated in Peret in the future, that's your second season, just as it happened in the times of the ancestors. Now, when this occurs, since the year consists of 360 days plus the 5 days, which is customary to add to them at the end, now 1 day shall be added every 4 years, called the Festival of the Good Doing, Netchers. Beginning from this day, it will be added to the 5 additional days, which is Heriu, before the new year. This will be done so that all men will know that we were a little short in the arrangement of time of the year. Now the laws of science of the skies were corrected. So this here comes from this record you see on the side here on the left, the Decree of Canopus. This occurs during the Ptolemaic era. Keep in mind, just because it's done during the Ptolemaic era does not mean that the Greeks are the ones who crafted this ingenuity. Just like today, let's say with the creation of hip hop. So we know that the descendants of Europeans are the political power, but that doesn't mean that they created hip hop. African Americans created hip hop. We are the engineers of that. So same logic goes here. So yes, this is done during the Greek political occupation and dominance, but it doesn't mean that they are the architects of this. Okay. So I just want to make that point. So now we get into the 3 seasons. Everything, the African sense of time is cyclic rather than strictly linear. Even though we have lineality or linear conceptualizations, but our linear conceptualizations occur within a cyclic skeletal pattern, if you will. So you see, we have the Ankh flooding season, Peret, which is the emergence or growing season, and we have Shamu, which is your harvest or low water season. And then you have your 5 days upon the year that was just discussed. And then on the 4th year, you add a day to that, to the 5 days, making it 6 days upon the year. On the fourth year of year, you add another day, which is 6 days. which we utilize for this currently developing calendar. Of course, you see the Netcher there. Of course, when you do the playback, you can pause this. You can copy the signs and practice. You can definitely look this up in any dictionary or any grammar book. All right, list of feasts. So this comes from the 5th dynasty under this is the tomb of Ptah Shepses. So what we want to call your attention to, of course, the structure. The structure is based on the images of how a temple is constructed, but how successive pylons and gates are. So this is what Egyptologists call a false door. We've come to call it a spirit door. But the type of art, if you will, the type of art construction is what's called aspective art. So where you could take multiple angles and put it into one image, or you condense images to give a sense of distance. It's just like when you draw on a flat sheet of paper, and when you draw on a flat sheet of paper, you could draw a house, you could draw people standing behind the house, but in front of the house, on the sides, but it's a flat surface. So what's called, artists may call it an optical illusion, giving you a sense of distance. So what you see here is a sense of distance, because this is the image of a temple and someone walking through the entire temple from the front all the way to the rear of the temple. But we call it a spirit door rather than a false door. So at the top register, you see on the left, you see the Ptah Shepses sitting in his noble position. He's now an ancestor. But let's go here. So we zoom in. So where I marked it, demarcated, this is Wep Rempet. This is the opening of the year. That's what this means here. So you have the horns, you have the sun, and this signifies the rising of the Sirius star every year. And then after that, you have Jehutet. So anyone who's a scribe or who's taking classes, you recognize the Habu bird or the Ibis bird here upon a standard, and then you have the breadloaf. So this is Jehutet, Festival of Jehuti. And when we go to part 2, we're going to deal with these glyphs over here. So this is Tepi Rempet over here, Tepi Rempet. So Tepi Rempet means the first of the year. So there's some time between the rising of the Sirius star and the first day of the year. So again, we'll go into that in the future, because these festivals help us to plot out time. When festivals are plotted on a calendar, and certain ones are consistent in the as the first. So Wep Rempet is consistent. More vocabulary. So we just discussed Wep Rempet. Here's how one of the ways in which you will write the word: Wepet Renpet, meaning opening of the year. You can also translate this as inauguration of the year. So for us, it's saying the year is about to come. So the doorway is open for the year to walk through. So Wepet comes from this word Wepet here, or Wep, which is a noun, horns, top of head, brow, top of mountain, zenith. Wepi, this is a verb meaning to open or to inaugurate. And then you have Renpi, young, fresh, but in a sense of something that's renewable, like plants. And then they use that for Renpet, so it shares consonants with the word for year. Okay. So Wet Renpet, opening of the year, inauguration of the year. So today you have the Coptic Orthodox Church, which is the same as the Ethiopian Church. And how they do the year, they start the year the first of Toth or Jehuti, September 11th. And then on the leap year, they'll start it on September 12th. A crown of the year. Now, I tend to look at their ideas crown of the year as Tepi Renpet, more so than Wep Renpet. So I made a slight adjustment as I did more research. And again, in part 2 of this, we'll elaborate on it, which I'm willing to elaborate verbally with questions. But as far as imagery and showing research and documents, I'll save that for part 2. And of course, I like to put the locations. So Coptic church is based here, then Ethiopian church is based here, and they share calendars, September 11th. Now, throughout Kemetic's multi-millennial history and multi-regional cultural expressions, when you look at the Hopi River around the area we call Menifera, Memphis area, so that's close to the apex of the Delta region. And we know that a delta, if you ever know the letter, is shaped like a triangle. So delta, so the apex is here. So in this region, they have their own names for each of the months. So you might call that like the northernly monthly nomenclature or northern monthly nomenclature. So here I took this from James P. Allen's Middle Egyptian. So you have the 12 months. These are lunar names. So Teki, he of the plumb bob. This is an epithet of Jehuti. Interesting that when you go to the temple of Medinet Habu, the mortuary temple of Ramessu III of the 20th dynasty, 20th dynasty, he has depicted Teki as a goddess. So that's something I discovered later on, because I find that interesting. Of course, second month, you have Menket, month of clothing. You have the voyage of Haru or Hathor, propitiator of the Kaz. So that's Neheb Kau, swelling of emmer wheat. So month 5 is the first month of the second season. This is where plants start to grow. So it's interesting that, or logical, that's called Chef Bedet, swelling of ember wheat, meaning is growing. Then you have big burning, little burning months. You have Renuet, Renutet, goddess of the harvest, which is right before the harvest season. So 9 to 12, that's your harvest season. Kansu, Kenti Keti. You have Ipehemet, she of the incarnation of Select. And then the last month is Wepet Renpet. So that's the name of the month. So if we were to calculate today, using the Kemetic calendar, we are currently in Wepet Renpet month right now. Wepet Renpet month now, because the Sirius star rises within this month. Here we go to the Waset region. So if we go back to the map, so we go here. So up here, you see the Menifera region. We go up south to where it says Thebes. And technically Thebes it comes from a Kemetic word, actually. So this is not a Greek word, really. It comes from ta-apet. Thebes is simply a Greek pronunciation of a Kemetic word. So this region here, they have their own names for the calendar. right here. So you have Thoth, Jehuti, one of Karnak, you have Hathor, Ka upon the Ka, or spirit upon the spirit, Ka her Ka. You have the offerings, one of the censored, one of Amenhotep, the one of Renenutet. So they share this in common as the 8th month. Again, one of Katsu, they share that as well. The one of Wadi. Then you have Ipi Ipi, and then Mesu Ra. So it's interesting because when you say heliacal rising of the Sirius star, you're saying that the Sirius star rises at the same time as the sun. So in one iteration of the calendar, you have Wep Rempet signifying the Sirius star in one iteration, and then the next iteration of the calendar, you have Ra, the birth of Ra. So put them together, they rise together, the sun and the Sirius star. And on the side here, we see the modern Coptic renditions of these months. So you have Thoth, Peyope, Thoth, Peyope. You have Hathor, Koyak, Tube. You have Imshir. All right, I'm not going to go through all of them. We could jump down to Missouri as the last one. So this is the Coptic renditions. All right. So last year, I did some calculations looking at how would we utilize this knowledge for today? How would we have a Kemetic New Year's now? That would be based on latitude, longitude, primarily, the lines going left to right. So at the top, you have 20 degrees going north. So last year, 20 degrees north, the heliacal rising occurred on July 24th. So that line crosses across Mali, Niger, Chad, Sudan, and the U.S., where it's Hawaii. At the 25th degree north, she will rise on July 28th. So now we're in Egypt. Now we're in Kemet. Egypt, Libya crosses Algeria, Mali again, and Florida. On the 30th degree, it keeps going north on August 1st. So Egypt, Pakistan, Mexico, U.S. at the level of the states of Texas, Louisiana, and Florida. After that, it keeps going north until you get way up here into Europe, all right, which is not significant for our orientation here. And then you have new moon dates. Why is this significant? Because remember, when we look at the lunar cycle, the new moon is what begins a new monthly cycle. And in Kemet, they started their lunar months according to the new moon. So their new moon lunar year begins the first new moon after the rising of the Sirius star. So last year, the lunar year would have started on August the 16th, as far as the new lunar year. But their sidereal year would start somewhere in here. So July 28th to August 1st, somewhere in there. And up top, you see Peret Spidet, which means the coming forth of the Sirius star, or Peret, going forth of Sothic. And the Pesej Netiu is the term that's applied for the new moon, Pesej Netiu. And there's some scholastic discussion on why that was chosen. More on that later. Okay. And we can end with, here's some 5 influential texts Definitely recommended. We recommend that you get the book African Time by University of Kemet Press by Ife Kilimanjaro, Takai Kilimanjaro, and Yara Aneb. You have Astronomy of Ancient Egypt, A Cultural Perspective, a very pinnacle work. You want to get the Preliminary Challenge, African World History Project, put up by ASCAC. There are 2 chapters in there specifically on this topic, one by Dr. Valinda Wabogo, Critical Issues in Nile Valley Studies, and the other chapter, The Calendar Project by Dr. Riketti Amen, and we affectionately call her Sebat Riketti Amen. And then you have African Philosophy by our elder scholar, Theophile Benga, African Philosophy. He has some information in there about the calendar, as well as other critical topics on African philosophy centering around Kemet. And then you have Ancient Egypt Science, Volume 2, Calendars, Clocks, and Astronomy by Marshall Clagan. Now, of course, this is not an exhaustive list, but this should get you started. And that completes the presentation. All right, now open it up to you, John.
All right, all right. Excellent, excellent. Iker, as we say. Iker, Iker. Excellent, excellent presentation. I hope everybody has definitely jot down some notes. And so basically, people need to stretch their arms, stretch their legs, go grab, another cup of tea or anything like that. But we want to jump into a brief Q&A. Now, I know that there were a few questions in the chat already. So if you have already typed your question in, if you don't mind, if you can type it again. And it would be a big help if you at the Seshu. So if you type the at sign and then put the Seshu, that way your question, excuse me, your question will be highlighted and I'll be able to recognize it a lot faster. All right. So, but I'm going to begin. I'll start with my questions while everybody else starts to type theirs in. I know there's a slight time lag with the chat. So, I guess it's a question / request for, you to elaborate. Early on, you had mentioned the 5 upon the year. And you had mentioned, could you mention those 5 names again? And then one in particular I wanted to ask you about.
Okay. So the 5 days upon the year are considered birthdays of the gods, if you will. So the specific ones, you have Mesut Asar, so that's the birth of Osiris. You have Mesut Heru, so that's the birth of Heru or Heru Or. And some iterations, they'll have different aspects of Heru. The primary one that most are familiar with is Heru Or, but it's always Heru. But it's not the son Heru, not the son of Osiris and Isis. So you have Heru Or, and then you have Mesut Set or Mesut Setesh, so that's the birth of Setesh. Then you have Mesut Aset, so that's the birth of Aseta. And then you have Mesut Nebuhet, so that's the birth of Nebuhet.
Okay, excellent. Now it's interesting because where you already elaborated is where my question was going to be, is the Heru, because I know a lot of people are familiar with Heru being the son of Wasir or Osiris and Aset, Isis. But this particular Heru is said as Heru or Heru Where, and I was wondering if you could particularly elaborate what's the difference between Heru, the son of Osiris and Isis, or Wasir and Aset, versus this Heru seems to be a brother.
Okay, so what can be indicated throughout history is that people, especially African people, one of the ways that we create networks between groups, because we're always looking to merge with each other some type of way. And that's part of our ethos, our asili. The African asili perceives reality in terms of relationships, in terms of family. So that's why you may call someone who has no blood relationship to you brother. Someone who is an elder to you might say mother or father. That even when we're younger, we'll say to someone who's our age, but we have a close relationship, we'll say, "Oh, that's my cousin. That's my cousin." You know, so we're looking at things in terms of family relationships. So when it comes to the relationship between deities, that's really the relationship between people. Where am I getting with that? So Heru, before the name Heru became, say, the son of Aset and Heru, Aset and Asar, Heru was his own deity, separate. So over time, in order to create relationships between groups, you may have it to where one group says, okay, we have a relationship with the followers of Asar. We also have a relationship with the followers of Aset. So we can make our deity the sun. Because at one point, say the priesthood of Asar or a group in whom Asar is the primary deity may have been like the old way. I'm coming in with the new way. How do I create that relationship between the previous group? By making my deity the son of your deity.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Where with Heru, or remember that was his own deity. So there's different iterations of Heru throughout Kemet.
Mm-hmm.
Because Heru is a predatory bird deity.
Yep.
So you have different names. So at
Mm-hmm.
one point, when they made the Epicamenal days, or what's called the intercalary month of 5 days, or it's also called the 13th month, Heru having his own agency at this time, at an early period, is a brother, an equal.
Right.
So this would more than likely be before you have an iteration of Heru who's called Heru Sa'aset, Heru, the son of Aset and Sar.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, I'm answering your question. Is that
No, no, no. That's great. Excellent. Yep. That's it. And I wanted to, yeah, I wanted you to elaborate on that because that's a question that comes up periodically. Once people start to dive into the different deities, they notice the difference. The difference. So that's good. And my other question, I just had two. So my other question was when you mentioned the deacons. So the deacons are in 10 in number, and I noticed that we've been doing this for a while. So I noticed that there's different calendars out there that have been proposed to be, a reconstruction of the ancient calendar and things like that. And I noticed that some people have calendars with 9 days in terms of the week. And so I was wondering, do you think that they're getting that nine from the understanding of the Netcher being a group called the Pasej or the Pasejet, which is the number 9?
mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that that's where people are pulling that from and not really looking at the deacons as you have, or what? What's your thoughts on that?
All right. So the Kemetic week being rendered as 9 days. For a long time, I rejected that flat out. Uh, I'll say that for those who use that orientation, you're free to do so. So I'm not going to say, oh, you're wrong because you use 9 days for the week, because that's not my place. Because we all have a right to use orientation that we feel works best for us. Uh, However, the 9 days being based on sidereal time, and yeah, I'll give a shout out to the elder Patah Seeker, who I believe started that movement, or at least to my awareness. It may have been someone else, I don't know. And I know that he emphasizes using the sidereal time. So when you look at a sidereal month is roughly 27 days, a sidereal month. Okay. So when you divide that by 3, what do you get? 9. So I believe that's how he got, or whoever came up with that idea came up with 9 days for a Kemetic week. However, when we look at the records, the word that's used for week, okay, is the word based on 10. So it's not, so when you go to ancient Kemet, it's based on 10. So there's 10 days for a Kemetic week based
Medew.
on ancient records. Now, if someone wants to utilize 9 for a modern orientation, that's fine. But that doesn't come out of the ancient records. The ancient records, they say 10, and we have the records for it.
Right. Okay. Well, there you have it. That was it. I just wanted those 2 points to be elaborated on because, in my experience in the past, those questions have come up before. So, again, if you have any questions, we can go through a brief Q&A. And so I'm going to highlight some of the questions since I've asked that. And I think the first one that I see, well, first of all, everyone in the chat says great presentation.
Do I?
They enjoyed the presentation, excellent presentation. Even people that came late said that they're gonna go back and watch it on a replay. So definitely, great presentation, and so now we're just gonna get down to the questions. I think this is the first one, probably kind of feeding off of my question to you. This is from Sax. He says, same as Heru the Elder. I guess we're talking about Heru where.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, that was that one. Another great job from Sister Mika. Oh, go ahead.
So the Heru, or yes, it can be translated as Heru the Elder. You also want to look at the ideas behind the where, or wera, or some people render it slightly different, but the glyphs are still the same word. So or it can mean elder, old, but also it can mean great in rank as well. So I just want to throw that in there.
Okay. Yep. All right. And shout out to Mika. Shout out to Zoo21.
Peace, Mika. Dua.
That's the brother Aziz. Great presentation.
Aziz, hey, Hotel Aziz, what's up?
Okay, another question from Sax is, what year is it in the Kemetic calendar? And I'm assuming he's talking about what year is it now.
Okay. So based on calculations from Shekinah Job, who's going to have him right here, great ancestor, in his work coming out of civilization barbarism, the current year would be 6264 if we utilize what's called a 0 point. So, for example, today, by using the 0 point based on the Christian calendar, we're in 2024. So their 0 point, they'll ascribe it, emphasize ascribe to the birth of their God Jesus. Okay. And again, we already know that we're past whether things are literal or not. So their 0 point is the birth of their God Jesus Christ, to now making it 2024. So in studies by Egyptologists and those who seek to utilize the Kemetic calendar for today for practice, will use Kemetic history as a 0 point. So when we utilize a record. It's called the Ivory Tablet of King Jer. He's the second or third king of the first dynasty. There's a record that depicts the cow with the horns and the renpet between the horns, signifying wet renpet. And then beneath the cow, you'll see the depiction of the Ankh symbol, which is the first symbol, first season of the year, the flooding season, correlating together. So that will be 4241 BCE, accordingly. So if you use that as your 0 point, that will make it 6264 right now. And by calculations that myself and others have done, right now it would be August 1st would be the beginning of the Kemetic year, because we're getting ready to come upon another helical rising of the Sirius star in a few weeks. And if we base that on the longitudinal lines that go east and west, starting from the equator and moving down north all the way to the 30th degree, which crosses Cairo in modern day Egypt, Kemet, and we take into account 10 degrees, 20th degree, 25 degree, 25th degrees, and the locations along the Nile River, specifically, like places like Khartoum. We can look at the origin of the White Nile, the origin of the Blue Nile. So we look at Lake Nyanza, which they call Lake Victoria, which is at the level of the equator. We look at Lake Tana, which is in Ethiopia. We look at the emergence of the White and the Blue Nile, as well as what they call the Red Nile at Bara, merging to become one at, I believe that's either 20, that is the 20th degree around there, where Khartoum in Sudan is. That's where it merges. And then we keep going north. Then we can use August 1st as the first day of the Kemetic year. So, of course, there's more detail behind that. Take into consideration the Decans as well, but primarily the Silver Star Rising.
All right. Well, all right. Neil Spade, you may have retyped it by now. I'm just working my way down the chat. So I see you said, did you answer? So if you don't mind retyping it, if you haven't already done so. So let me keep going down. Okay. Benny San has 2 questions. What is the story behind the 5 days added to the end of the year? And were there any festivals done during this period of time? During this period, such as Sesh. I'm assuming he's talking about the.
You're saying Heb-Sed. I'm assuming.
Heb-Sed.
Okay. So, what is the story behind the 5 days added to the end of the year? So, we have that Plutarch relayed that. So that was at the beginning of the presentation. So you can rewind, go back to look at that. So he related. It also discusses it in the book of Knowing the Transformations of Ra and Overthrowing Apep. It's a document coming from about 450 or 430 BCE from a priest of Amun-Ra. But anyway, so that's the year that this document comes out, at least that we have. So it discusses it in that document as well. The order of births to signify the year, which predate Plutarch.
Yep. Okay.
Were there any festivals during this time period, such as the Heb-Sed? So I'll split that second question into 2 parts. So during the 5 days upon the year, they consider that a dangerous time period to where symbolically she's giving birth outside of the year. So evil forces can be present. So they could have done, some what they call spells and rituals during that time as well. Can you go back, Wujao? I want to make
Oh,
sure I get
okay.
the
Sorry.
part.
There you go.
All right. During the time they Heb Seb. So Heb Seb is where the king, the Nasut, will renew himself by demonstrating his ability to lead. That he's still physically healthy. Do you have anything else on
Hmm.
that part, Wujao?
No, you said it. The Hebsed is a kind of like a jubilee type of festival that a king would perform, and I believe the first one for particular kings was roughly around the 30th year of their reign,
Mm-hmm.
and then it wouldn't be every 30. It would be the first one would be 30 years into their reign, and then subsequent celebrations or demonstrations would be, I think, every 2 or 3 years. So that's pretty much, and then there was a lot of different rituals within that whole festival that
Mm-hmm.
take place. Now, what I would add real quick, because of the current conversations that I'm aware of that's happening, there's a particular ritual during the Heb Sed festival that's called driving the four calves, where the Nisut, the king, would drive four cows, and these four cows, and it would be attached with rope, and the four cows would represent the four cardinal points to prove or to symbolize the king's dominion over the four cardinal points of his domain. And these cows are figuratively colored white, black, red, and then Sab for multicolored. So you have Hedge for white, Kem for black, Desher for red, and then Sab for multicolored. And those are representative of four cardinal points. Just wanted to add that since brought up Heb said. So,
Mm-hmm.
and that's an interesting festival there. So I think brother Flag had a good question here. Do you have a release date for your Kemetic calendar yet?
So it'll have to be before August. So we're working on it.
All right.
The format is already done. The format is done. All the details, of the calendar itself is finished.
All
So it's
right.
just a matter of just getting it printed and published. So
All right. All right. Is it going to be could you is it going to be in the format of like a folding, like you fold it, like how people can hang up
yes,
the, is it
so
a
you can
wall
fold it and
calendar?
put it on your wall. Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. Excellent. Next, Jehudi Ma'at. How long has Sonjedi been working on this? Seems like a lot of work.
Oh yeah. So I mean, I've looked into this for like years, but for the past year, I've upped my efforts. So I've been taking, all my previous knowledge and, really started putting it together. Been doing that, pretty much, in not in secret. Of course, there's some people who, of course, know about it. But I didn't publicize it because I took the advice of our elder scholar and researcher, Takaka Majaro, says, do your stuff in silence, you know. So um, yeah,
Hmm.
so for the past year, I've been doing a lot of reading, studying, asking questions, getting answers, abandoning previous thoughts about the calendar, learning new things. I've come across things that were challenging for me to comprehend, and just really going through it, having more conversation, getting then lots of light bulbs are going off. In fact, this presentation that I just gave to y'all, I did this about a year ago. I've learned things since this presentation that is not in the presentation. So that's why I said,
Hmm.
the next one will be like the where it's concise. So this
Hmm.
is really the warm up. So it's
All
been a
right.
year that I've done concentrated studies on this, but I've been exposed to it for years.
All right. So just to let everyone know, again, appreciate everyone hanging out with us. It's 3:41 our time. We're on East Coast. So we're gonna have a hard stop at 4. So we got 20 minutes to kind of kick it, in the Q&A. So don't be shy. Ask your questions, and I'm gonna scroll down in the order. All right. So we're gonna try to make sure we get through everybody, get through all of them within the 20 minutes or so minutes. All right. Next one is Meduit TV. What is the event in ancient Kemet, and who defines the 0 point? And I'm assuming that's when you were saying in your answer about what year we in now.
Okay. So again, the 0 point is based on 4241, that which is supposed that that was the earliest record you have of the Cirrus star rising, that in conjunct, or excuse me, that signified the beginning of the year. So based on the calculations that Shekin Jolt has in his work, Civilization Barbarism, where scholars have used that as a 0 point. So when you go to the book by Askak, The Preliminary Challenge, and the work by Valinda Libobogo, they discuss that as the 0 point. You can even go into works by the great ancestor, I think I have it over here somewhere, Jacob Carruthers, because that idea even goes back to the 80s, actually, at least the 1980s, by African-centered scholars, to utilize that as a 0 point. So I'm just carrying that idea forward, because there's logic behind it. All right, and Kim, who defined the 0 point? So yeah, so I just
Yeah.
gave that. Yeah.
All right. And I did notice that you mentioned the King Jur, right? Or
Correct.
Den or Jur?
Jur.
Jur. And it was with the cow with the Renpet glyph associated with it during that
Between the
time.
horns. Yeah.
Between those. Okay. All right. So these people have something to look out for. All right. Next one is from Sax again. Yeah, Sax been paying attention.
I like it.
So September 11th of this year is the first day of 6265. I guess that's a question. And then how long did the opening of the way ceremony last? And another question, was it similar to modern New Year celebrations? He's trying to cram his questions in there.
Nice.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Sax.
All right.
Sax like.
Do on Netcher. Okay, so not September 11th, because we're utilizing August because that's closer to ancient Kemetic records. Even today in Egypt, they celebrate the flooding of they have a Nile festival in August. September 11th is based on the Coptic calendar. So September 11th is not based on ancient Kemet. It's based on the Coptic calendar. And I've had conversations with Coptic Egyptians that I work with, and I asked them, why September 11th? 3 of them told me the same thing, that there was an event that occurred around that time in the early centuries. I believe it was in the 3rd century AD, when they start the Coptic years. You have what's called Anno Martyrdom. So we use Anno Domini, so year of our Lord. The Coptic Church uses Anno Martyrdom, the year of the martyrs, and that there was a massacre that occurred. So I believe that when the massacre stopped, either when it started or stopped, it occurred on September 11th. And that's how they start their year. So the Coptic Church is based off of a Christian-based event, historical event, and we want to recognize the atrocities that occurred to Coptic Egyptians because genocide should never happen to anyone. Okay? So I want to recognize it. However, when we use ancient Kemetic records, we're not basing it off of Christian events. So September 11th is based on a Christian event. Again, we want to recognize them for their historical significance. However, for the ancient calendar, September 11th is not dynastic orientation. So August is based on ancient Kemetic orientation and the model for the orientation. So we don't live in the past. We simply use the past as a model for how we do things today. So August 1st is closer to when ancient Kemetu would have celebrated their New Year, not September.
All right. Next one is how long did the opening of the way last? How long did that ceremony last?
So based on your longitude, so let's say Karnak Temple. Karnak Temple is about 25 degrees north. They would see the people there would see the heliacal rising before people in Anu or closer to what we're calling Cairo. So they would celebrate it maybe a few days before them. Those are say 27, excuse me, let's say 22 degrees. So we're still in Kemet. They'll see it a day or two before those in Karnak. So you have like a few weeks when people are successively celebrating it based on the days and evenings that they see the heliacal rising. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, and that seems to go in his next question, because today, New Year's, like on the East Coast, we watched the apple drop in New York, or we watched the peach drop here in Georgia. But at midnight on the East Coast, it's not midnight over there in the Midwest or California yet. So it's like a cascade effect of celebrations, and that's what you just described. And I think that goes, to his last question, unless you want to address it directly.
No,
he said, was it similar?
That's good. That's good.
Yep. All right. So go to the next one. So kind of it's not too many more, so we should have time. All right. Next one is from Neil Spite. I guess he asks, what about the 13th zodiac, Ophiuchus, aka Imhotep?
Now, do you mean like the 13th month? Hopefully, if that's what you're saying.
Probably have to wait for him to reply again.
Okay.
So Neil Spite, if you could clarify that.
So how did you conclude that? Now, whose orientation are we saying that that's Imhotep? Because I don't see in any Kemetic record where Imhotep represents the 13th month.
Okay, so
if anything, it would be Jehuti, if anything, because he's in the mythology. But Imhotep is not in the mythology.
All right, so hopefully he'll get back.
Not to reduce Imhotep's importance. Okay, all right.
Yeah, we'll see if he.
So the 13th month is the 5 days upon a year.
Okay, and let's see. Okay, Ramza just saying he's going to watch later. All right. And Sax has another question. Have you considered making an online calendar such as Google Cal, Yahoo Calendar, etc.?
Not yet, because right now, we need to do physical calendars.
All right.
Because of course, they'll be for sale. So, we're going to sell them, then do the physical ones. If we do the online ones, then sometimes it makes it easier for people just to take it. So we're starting off with physical calendar.
Sax already trying to get you to make it open source.
It's not open source.
All right. And then he says Dua for that. Emmy Cat
Mhm.
is saying, "Yep, do your stuff in silence." Um, and now also Ramza make a comment. Retrograde is important, going backwards. Just a quick comment on that. Or was there any retrograde? Do you notice of any observations of retrograde within the timekeeping system and things? Anything?
Not to my knowledge. Um, I know many of us use retrograde. However, that is based on Greek orientation, because when they look at, was it Mercury retrograde? So
Mm-hmm.
the way it appears, looking from our planet, it appears to move backwards, but
Yeah.
it's actually not moving backwards. It's going in its own orbit. But Mercury's orbit is shorter than Earth's,
Mm.
so it's going to. So if we're going to the right, if Earth here and uh, and Mercury's here. So this is Earth. Here's Mercury. So we're going to the right, but then we're still going over to the right. But since the orbit is shorter, it's going to go to the it's going to curve around to the left
Mm-hmm.
earlier. So from our vantage point, it looks like it's going backwards, but it's
Right.
actually going backwards.
Yeah, and I think Lighten just said the same thing. It's not
Yeah,
actually
it
going
doesn't go
backwards.
backwards. So now some people use that to signify paying attention to your communication, which is okay. Um, I personally don't use it based on that new knowledge, because for the Greeks, they looked at that as the bad omen.
Mm-hmm.
That was the Greeks. I'm not aware of Africans using that orientation without Greek influence. I don't know. I haven't seen that in Kemet, even though Kemet, they do have lucky and unlucky days, based on their own cultural thoughts. But Mercury
Mm-hmm.
retrograde, I'm not aware of that. But I do know that it's a Greek orientation. So I personally limit my Greek orientative usage, even though it's kind of hard to get around it living in a Western society. Um,
Right.
but again, if you use it, fine. But I personally don't use it.
All right. We have another viewer from across the pond in Azania, Johannesburg. So good. He
Mhm.
said, though I joined late. He's gonna watch later. That's good. Excellent. And I don't see any more questions. So what I wanted to ask you to, I guess, to close out is what's the, because I noticed that you said the word when wet and when wetty, or and when wetty you would associate what we would call astronomers, right? Um, what's the difference between, in that sense, what's the difference between astronomers and astronomy versus astrology and astrologers? What,
Okay.
because I know some people tend to want to use astrology as opposed to astronomy. So if you could close us out and
Okay.
kind of touch on
So
that.
okay. So astronomy, as its current usage, astronomy is the scientific observation of the movement of celestial bodies. So this is where people are utilizing geometry, physics, chemistry, etc., in their study of the stars. Even though technically that could be, by definition, used for astrology, but astrology, as it's used now, is more so as a cultural idealistic orientation. So when people use zodiacs to correlate to personalities and events that um, influence events on Earth, so that's
Mm-hmm.
astrology. But astronomy
Mm-hmm.
is more like an astrophysics, like uh, Dr. Neil Tyson deGrasse.
Mm-hmm.
That's more astronomy,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
where someone who uh, will use signs to determine events on Earth for individuals or life events, etc. That's astrology.
Okay. All right. Well, and so the astronomy would kind of gel better with cosmology. Also, am I correct on
Well,
that, or is that different?
well, when we deal with cosmology, we're still talking about a like a cultural orientation, like um, a creation account. So a creation
Mm-hmm.
account, we're dealing with the cosmology,
Okay.
you know.
All right. All right. Good. So, separating these terms: cosmology, astronomy, and astrology. All right. So we gotta make sure we know what each one means and how what people mean by them. All right. Well, listen. We are
Um,
up on that time.
um,
This
okay.
last one
Uh,
here. I know in
I
certain.
saw another one, voodoo. I mean, yeah, the voodoo, and again, much respect to all of my voodoo practitioners. I have god sisters who are mambos as well. Um, so in voodoo, there many of them fuse European ideals in there as well. Again, not saying I'm not saying that anybody's wrong. I'm saying this is what's happening. Um, but we pay. I mean, I would pay homage to the low wise as well. So, but again, that's where it's coming from. Um,
Okay, I
so
do see. Yeah, I see some questions that I didn't see yet. So let's try to blitz through these real quick. Then, just remind everybody if you enjoyed the not if you enjoyed this the whether you enjoyed it or not, but I know you did. Make sure you support the brother Sonjedi. Information is on the screen there on how to support. All right, and we're gonna go through these last ones here. Okay, we have. I'm just gonna say Amun Hotep in Ra. I'm not sure what the drip fire. Okay. Question is Ehotep Uncle Johnson Neb Neb. All right. Sorry I'm late. Oh, he just saying I'll catch the replay. All right.
okay,
Okay.
do I?
And it's another question here. Looks like a question. Are you aware of the Kemetic calendar made by the
Let's
the
see.
decedent Neb Naba El Morendin? Let me get this right. Moro Denig Big. And I know I butchered it, but I just wanted to pronounce it in parts. I always at least try to pronounce people's names. Of the organization, the Earth Center in England. So I don't
Um,
know if you want to touch on that real quick.
yes, I am. I am familiar with the Earth Center. Um, do I have much respect to that ancestor for what he established. Um, they do have some good work, in my opinion. Uh, as far as their calendar is based on the Coptic calendar. Um, so uh, outside of that, I think it's pretty accurate as far as the order of the order of the deacons. They use a 10-day week on their calendar as well. Um, I just use a different orientation. So theirs is based on the Coptic calendar. Even though one member that I spoke to, and mind you, that's one member. I didn't speak to all the members. One member who's actually part of their executive uh, council told me no, that is the ancient orientation. Um, but that person at that time cannot or chose not to answer any other questions in detail. Just told me no, it's the ancient calendar, but all evidence points that it's based on a Coptic calendar, which is okay. You know, if that's easier to use, cool. But when we look at the records, when I looked at geography of the Nile Valley from the Great Lakes region at the level of the equator all the way to the Mediterranean. Even the Department of I looked at the Department of Agriculture of Egypt, the Agriculture Department of Sudan, the Agriculture Departments of Tanzania, Uganda. Okay, I'm talking about government websites. I've looked at the time when the Nile floods, when the monsoon rains. I looked at these things, and September's out. So
Yep.
you know, so again, it's not my opinion. This is what not just the history, but even the modern geography of that entire region. Um, and even today, they have a Nile festival in Egypt on August the 15th, which signifies them celebrating the flood. which is the beginning of the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
So no,
And also with the Nile over there now, I know in the later in recent years, there's a lot of negotiations because of the flow of the Nile, and basically whoever lives further upstream kind of has a dictatorship or potential dictatorship of the rest. And so I know a lot of those countries with Egypt, modern Egypt, Sudan, they're in constant negotiations about whether to build more dams, not build more dams, and things like that, because it can actually disrupt everybody downstream. So that's an interesting topic in and of itself, you
mm,
know.
yeah.
But okay, so we're at the mark, and sorry we have to end now. Normally I'm known as MC Iron Lung, and Sonjedi is close behind me. Both of us could be long winded, as we're both known to be, I guess. Um, but I have to end now, and again, that was a great presentation. Everybody enjoyed it, seemed to enjoy it. Sister Emiket says, great presentation, Sabah, Sanjeti. And so now you gave hint to a second or like,
Hmm.
a second one. So just a quick question. When do you think you'll be able to do another presentation?
Well, that would definitely be before the end of July. So sometime in July,
Okay.
it'll be a more comprehensive uh,
Okay.
presentation based on the updates that I put to the calendar, and also as an advertisement for the calendar.
Yeah. Okay.
But giving you here's all of my justifications as to why I propose these certain changes and why these additions, etc.
Okay. Well, whatever whichever ways that you spread that out there, we definitely want to have you back when you want to give the second presentation. Definitely. So, but yeah, so I enjoyed it, and you know, this is the work we do. As the Shemsu Heru research team, as individual Sabah of Sesh Medew Netcher, Rani Kemet, etc., and just the ancient Egyptian culture as a whole. So Sanjeti is my comrade, my fellow warrior scholar in this, and this is not all we do. So Sanjeti, just real quick, what else or how can people get in touch with you, and what else, where what are some other things that people could find you engaged in, just real briefly.
Right? So I'm also an instructor for the Institute of Kemetic Philology, which is a school started by Dr. Biketi Amen, in which we teach Sesh Medu Netcher. So I teach two classes in there. So your entry level, I teach that. Um, the writing system, which is what that's called. I also do a nouns class, and in the future I'll be doing some more. We have another instructor in there, um, uh, brother Jetta Monk. He teaches as well. He's done presentations. Our elder Bonacci, he's been an instructor, and of course Dr. Biketi Amen, has instructed. So
Hmm.
these greats, they're getting older. They're getting older. So some of us younger folks will be picking up some more of that responsibility, with the
Hmm.
school, which is why I started teaching the nows class. Um, but I'll keep the first level going, and then I'll be looking at some of the higher level, teach some of the higher levels as well as one or two of the other instructors. So,
Hmm.
and we actually have a I'm starting one this Thursday. So if anyone's interested, uh, then you can inbox me, Sanjeti Ankara. On Facebook is Scribe Sanjeti. Um, Also Sanjeti Ankara at gmail.com. I don't know if you
You
can put
wanna
that.
you wanna type that? Can
Yeah.
you type that in the chat,
Private chat. I'll put it into the
or
private chat here, Sanjeti Ankara at gmail.com.
all right, we'll
Boom,
get
I
that
sent
over
it
there.
there. So that's my email.
All right.
If you are interested, uh,
Make sure I
shoot me an
type that
email.
in there.
So that's the summer course. I'll do another one in the fall as well. Um, but you definitely want to come into the summer one. Then again, I'm starting. I do payment arrangements. Try to make things simple for people. So if you're interested, email me. We can get started. Do arrangements. And also keep in mind that Wujao is an excellent instructor as well. You know, so I'm not sure when you do your class, but but we'll be doing more collaborations uh,
Mm-hmm.
coming up as well. So writing projects.
Yep. I like that's why I want to get with you on just to give people a teaser. And we haven't discussed this yet, but I definitely want to get with you on collaborating because I'm looking at having a large class because one of my challenges have been people in different time zones, and so I moved my structure over to kind of self-paced method
Hmm.
when I deal with students once a week.
Hmm.
But by collaborating, I wanted to get, especially on the advanced, more advanced, dealing with
Hmm.
the grammar and things like that. So hopefully people will be able to look out for that, and I'll be able to iron things out with you, and we can collaborate and do some big things, big things.
Yeah.
uh, all right, so listen, have to shut it down. So I appreciate everybody tuned in, and hopefully everyone enjoy the rest of their day over here in Georgia. It's nice and sunny, so try to get some sunshine out there, get some exercise. And also, I know Sonjedi, you didn't mention this, but I know you also uh, in the health profession to a degree and things like that.
Yeah.
And even though I know this like not in the context of Egypt for this, but I always like to mention that because me myself, I'm a certified nutrition coach, and I know you deal with health and everything. So health is always like on also on my mind. And the
Hmm.
older we get, I always try to for myself, I need it, but other people, every chance I get, always try to mention health, eating healthy, moving, exercising. Don't be too sedentary, because this
Right.
internet can get us stuck behind a computer. On the sunny days, people be stuck in their rooms on a computer all day. So
Hmm.
definitely, today's Sunday. Get out there, get some fresh air, spend some time. So I want to
Yeah. Yeah. Breathing, moving. Keep moving. And diet. Everyone get your cardio in. Right. Of course, consult your doctor first before you take on any stringent exercise. We don't want to get sued out here. Someone says, "Hey, Jetty, gave me a prognosis." Like, no.
you
So,
have to make a disclaimer. This is for educational
this is
purposes
for
only. No.
educational purposes only. So make sure you're exercising, getting good cardio. Don't do too much. Don't overdo it. But consistency is important. Of course, I need that advice as well. Um, your diet, go as much as you can. Do raw foods as much as you can. Okay, as much as you can do raw foods. Um, keep your blood pressure down. Uh, if you have to take medications to save your life, do what you got to do, um, so that you can live. But do it to where you can get to a place of health. So if you could get off of medication, then talk to your doctor about it first. you know,
Yep, yep, yep.
uh, get a good diet, high fiber diet, because you make sure your bowels um, are healthy,
Regular,
regular,
regular.
healthy. You need to do that. Get plenty of water. Stay hydrated. Movement, whatever it is. Do yoga. Do cardio. You know, do mobility exercises. Look that up. Yeah, mobility exercises like for your knees and joints and hips. Keep that going because I have lots of patients where they're getting stiff and things like that. If you can avoid that, then you know that'd be great. Of course, there's health health issues that cannot be avoided, but if it can be avoided, um, then do what you have to do. Uh, do like I said, do yoga, whatever name comes with, whether it's Kemetic yoga, whatever the case may be. The importance is your body moving. Whatever you decide to call it is technically irrelevant to the effect it has on the body. Okay, so call whatever.
Maybe we should, and maybe we should do. I'm gonna put this out there. Maybe we should get together and do a presentation on the word Seneb, the whole phrase Uncle Ja Seneb in relationship to health. You know,
I'm down with it. Yeah,
we could probably put together some information and share that out. But all right, so listen, you all, take the advice, and appreciate everybody tuned in, and definitely appreciate you, brother Sonjedi, for coming through. We just missing one arm of the Shemsu Heru research team, which is the brother Sarimotep. He's probably out there doing some comparative linguistic work as we speak.
Right.
He's in his deep voice. Yeah, you already know. But all right, so I'll say Shem Hotep, and look out for our next live. And just so everyone knows, you know, the theme that we're want to stick to is basically kind of focus on things that we can all agree on, and not to ignore the disagreements, but you know, we want to focus on things that we agree on, so that we know where everyone is, and we can lay that foundation. Then we can round back to the things we disagree on in a much more professional and productive manner. And so that's my intention. That's what I would like to see, and so that's what you're going to see more of on this channel in the future live streams. But other than that, again, dua, and for coming out, Sonjedi, and I'm going to leave you all with outro. Just outro, just showing different people supporting our materials, including our research material and things like that. So again, Shem Hotep.
Super